All right, guys, what's up? I'm back. This is a video number, video number 3, and this one is law. So it's absolutely crazy trying to get all this set up. I've been kind of working on my studio and got a new microphone, but it's not even hooked in correctly yet. So you can see my new flag behind me, and I'll tell you guys about flags. That's actually the flag we should be flying. This is our peace flag. And the flag we are flying is a wartime flag. We're actually in maritime law right now, which is a whole nother video. But what's been really interesting to me is just the amount of energetic blocks that happen when you're trying to bring this stuff forward. Some of you may understand that, some of you may not, but long story short, I'm going to push through and I'm going to push these videos out, and I'll just get better as I go, and the systems will get better. But man, I had some technical difficulties on the last 2 videos getting them ready. So today we're going to talk about law. And I mentioned this in the last video that it was really important to understand jurisdiction. And what that is land, air, and water, which stands for law. And it's amazing that they don't teach this in school. I mean, there's a reason why they don't, because once you understand this, you're going to see clearly that we're in maritime law when we should be on land, which is common law. And that's exactly what happened when, after we won the Revolutionary War and we defeated the British and we got our freedom, we really only had it for a while. Through the Bar Association and through the Crown, they were able to come in and use this admiralty law. As a matter of fact, some of our founding fathers were admiralty law lawyers, which was, or what is also known as maritime law. And that was Alexander Hamilton from New York and John Adams from Massachusetts were already maritime lawyers. So some of the guys that were actually our founding fathers were actually key in setting this up. But I'm going to show you mostly on this video. On this video, we're going to go through the 3 jurisdictions, but you're also going to kind of understand how they usurped that power right back from us. Even though we won the Revolutionary War, to this day, every corporation is owned, every corporation, this includes Australia, Canada, and many other countries as well, is owned by the Crown. So I've got like 18 corporations. Most of them are not doing anything, but guys, this is going to be shocking, and I'm going to show you this we're going to go into corporations and all that in another video. But I'll just give you the short version of it. When you register your corporation, you register it with the state, which is a corporation. That state registers it with the United States Corporation, which we're going to go into, and the United States Corporation is owned by the Crown. So they own everything. They own everything. They own our land. They own our vehicles. They own our businesses. We just get to use them. So we're going to go into all that. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but today we want to talk about law. So the best way to do this is just to illustrate it out. And the coolest thing about law is America is founded ecclesiastically. So what that means is the original law in the Declaration of Independence is based on the Bible, and it comes from Genesis. So what we'll do here is we'll show, so we've got land, air, and water. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the air on top, because air goes on top of land, just so I can show you kind of an analogy. Let's see. So we've got land, air, water, and we're going to go into air first, which this is called trust law. And this comes from Genesis. And let me get you the exact. It's 1:26 through 2:25. So a lot of people don't realize this, but the Bible is actually a trust endearment. And trust law is the highest law in the land. And we'll get more into how you can use a trust to protect everything. You use an express trust. And when you go into court currently, you are considered the trustee, and they're assuming that you've done something wrong. And that's how they can pin it on you, because you're the trustee, and then the state's the beneficiary. But the truth is, when you set up your own trust, you become the beneficiary. You make the state the trustee, which is the way it was originally designed to be. And that's why you want to come off the water onto the land. And we're going to kind of go talk about this from many different angles, but I just want to let you know that the highest form is trust law, and it does come from the Bible. It's also known as canon law. And these have a lot of history. Canon law is a body of Roman ecclesiastical jurisprudence that was compiled between the 12th and 14th centuries. It developed with the Christian church. And then one of the things that's really cool about trust law, there's actually a lot of cool things about trust law, but is that all things are held in the benefit of another. So guys, trust law is such a profound, it goes beyond law. So it comes from Genesis, it comes from the Bible, but if you can learn to apply trust law in your life, in your relationships, in your business, in all of your dealings, you can literally have whatever you want in the world. And I got to give credit to Brandon Joe Williams, which is another one of the teachers that I use, our mentors. He really illustrated this for me, and I had this profound cognition. And what he said is that when you go out in the world and you act like you're the trustee and everyone else is the beneficiary, for example, in this class, you guys are the beneficiary. Like, I'm here to give you this, and I'm here to do it as accurately as possible. Sure, I'll make some mistakes, but I'm here to be your trustee. And so when I approach this in that way, that means that I have to make sure I've done my research and that I'm doing to the best of my knowledge what is true. And I am acting as a trustee, and I'm trying to give instead of asking to receive. So what most people do, and this goes for business, this goes for relationships, what most people do is they go out in the world and they ask what they can get. So immediately they're trying to be the beneficiary in brand new relationships. That could be with in an actual physical relationship with your wife or your husband, or it could also be with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or it could be as a job, like, I'm here as a beneficiary, what do you give me? But I'm telling you, if you flip that, it's like the golden rule, treat others as they want to be treated. If you flip that in life, this is truly what trust law is. Hopefully I'm illustrating this in a way you can understand. If you apply trust law to your life, to your business, to the way you approach people, and you always figure out what I can give first, how I can be your trustee and you benefit from me, then those type of people, that's like what Jesus was like. They can have the whole world. So what happens is when you give first, you receive back, and you usually get it exponentially. When you ask for something first, then you have to give back exponentially over time. And sometimes that'll be through despair and different things that'll happen to you. And that's also, not to get too esoteric here, guys, but that's the difference between light and dark energy. I guess I'll go ahead and talk about that for a second. Light energy is something that you have to give first and then you receive back exponentially. Dark energy is something you get first and then you give back over time exponentially. So there is a battle of light and dark on this planet. Don't be mistaken. And that's what we're going to talk about. You're going to see the darknesses down here in the water. And the easiest way to tell is if it takes energy in the beginning and you have to give it out without worrying about what you're going to get back, that's light energy. But if you're just getting something quickly and it gives you an immediate reward, that's dark energy. I give you many examples, like alcohol. You know, you get buzzed in the moment and it's fun, but then you have to pay for it for 3 days. Cheating on somebody. It might be like in the moment it feels amazing or whatever, it's supposed to be so cool, and then over time you ruin a relationship. There's stories like the rock star that signs a deal with the devil. You know, he becomes famous for 7 years and has this rock star life, has everything he ever wanted, all the women he ever wanted, all the money, all the drugs, whatever he wants, lives this crazy life, and then all of a sudden his life just goes to shit, and the rest of his life's like 20 years of purgatory. So that's the way that the dark energy works. It has to have permission off you. Okay, I don't want to get too much into that, but the trust law is flipping that and saying that you are the trustee and everybody you come into contact is a beneficiary. If you live that way, it feels like you're giving more energy out in the beginning because you are, but you actually will have exponential things come back to you. So that is the in-depth truth of trust law. Like, this is the law this is the ultimate law. This is the highest law. And each law creates the law underneath it, right? So God created land, told us to take dominion over land, air, and water. So it all just falls downward. And as we go through these, you'll see that everybody that is a U.S. citizen, at least, and it goes true in other countries as well, but we're going to focus on the U.S., is actually in the water. And I'll show you why. So, okay, so that's trust law. And next is land, which is common law. So this is like our Declaration of Independence. This is what we're supposed to be under right now. Actually, we're supposed to be kind of between these two, right? So we have a trust set up. We have our feet on the land. We have our trust set with God or with Source. And you got to kind of think of like there's a little dude over here. And this is you. And right now, so here's the water. Maybe this is some mountains. And this is the air, right? So you got your air, your land, and your water. And right now, you're standing in the water. So our goal here, and this is also, what's really cool about this is also the spiritual evolution. And that's why I've told you guys that this process is extremely spiritual. And I know for myself personally, and maybe you'll find this true for you, that you cannot actually spiritually evolve until you get yourself out of the water, because the water is ran by, I'm just going to say it, the Cabal, and it is also, it's dark. Many of you already know that. But we probably don't understand how all this works, so we're going to get into that. So the journey is to move out of the water and onto the land, and then also to operate in the air and the land. So you want to be up here. And that's the way we naturally are as a living human being. But according to the way that they have us set up in water, we are dead. We are not alive. We are chattel property. So let's go back to land. So land is common law, and this is also known as equity. This is things like titles. Let's see, grants, MCOs, which stands for Manufacturers Certificate of Origin, which is actually, we're going to go into this too, but the MCOs, which you're like, if you buy a car from GMC, you get an MCO, but what happens is when you register it with the state, you're basically giving that car away to the state. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'll explain this in another video. And then they give you what's called a certificate of title. So the state actually holds the MCO. So in common law, you would just hold an MCO. You wouldn't hold a certificate of title. Why is it called a certificate of title? Because it's not a real title. And the same goes for warranty deeds. They're warranty deeds because they're not real deeds. And if you look at the way you hold a warranty deed, like it's a tenant in common, or even if you're just a tenant or whatever the way it's vested, if you read right on your deed, it tells you you're a tenant and you don't own the land either. So that's what they've done by putting us down here into the water. So but going back to the land, so patents, grants, titles, MCOs, securities, gold, and there's no corporations up here. And I'm going to explain that in just a second. So now we're going to move down into the water. So water is Cabal, dark. This is Admiralty law. Might not spell it right. That's all right. Admiralty law. And this is also commerce. And this is contract. So this is where we operate. And let me ask you this question. So why do we need corporations, right? We're all raised to believe, I started getting corporations when I was first starting out in my career in real estate. I've been in real estate for 22 years. And I started like holding my properties in these LLCs and corporations. And the reason we're told that we get corporations is because to limit our liability, right? But if you think about this at a higher level, when we were on the land and people had integrity and they didn't have to hide things from everybody, they were operating in full integrity. So there was no need for a corporation. A corporation, the only reason you need limited liability is so that you can do someone wrong and not get hurt. It's kind of a crazy way to think about it. The The only reason we need corporation is because people are doing out integrity bullshit. And so that's kind of the world that we're getting into to illustrate the water. And in contract law, one of the main things that really plays into what's happened to us and why a lot of the things that are going on are fraud. Actually, almost everything in the water is fraud. One of the things that is really important in contract law is there's 8 rules for contract law. And if you talk to a bar member, they're going to tell you that there's 4 or 6, or some of them say 3. But the most important rule that has been completely dismissed is the fact that contracts need to be like kind to like kind. So that is why, and we'll go into more of this, that they create a straw man when you're born, and they give you a all caps name, because what they're doing is they're creating a corporate entity. What does the word corporate mean, guys? If you look it up, what's corp mean? It means dead. So they're creating this vessel that we talked about in the last video, and that way they can actually do commerce with you. They can't do commerce with a living man. A corporation cannot have a contract with a living man. I know that sounds crazy. That's why your name is in all caps on everything. Because a corporation has to do commerce with has to have a contract with a like kind. So a corporation can contract with a corporation, and a living man can contract with a living man. But a corporation cannot contract with a living man. And that's been completely forgotten in this day and age. But it's true law, and you can look it up. And that is exactly why, and they know this, and that's exactly why they created your straw man, so that they could contract you. And that's what all of our courts are based on as well. So, understanding that, and understanding that you're in the water, because the way that you get in the water is through all the contracts that you get into. So one is your birth certificate, the next is your driver's license, the next is your your hunting license, the next is your IRS, filing essay, all caps name with the IRS. So they basically, all of this stuff, guys, is voluntary. Like they can't actually make you do this stuff. You're just volunteering to do it because it's what's normal. And so you get into all these contracts and you're fully in the water. So let's explain this in a different way as well. So the reason we have to understand law is because it's like the foundation. In order for us to build for the rest of this course, you have to really understand the difference between maritime, common law, and trust law. And just know that you have to move up. And so we have what's called status, standing. So status is who you are in court according to the government. Are you a U.S. citizen? Are you an American state national? And we're going to talk more about that. As a U.S. citizen, you are considered an employee of the United States Corporation. And that's why you have to follow all their statutes. So down here is all the statutes. By the way, these are not lawful. These are legal. There's a big difference between legal and lawful. And do you know the definition of legal? This is going to blow your freaking mind. And I'll give you the source. It's from, I think, the 6th edition of Encyclopedia Britannica, but I got to look that up. Don't quote me on that. The definition of legal is the undoing of God's law. Guys, if you research this back, this all was created to take the power back from the people and make us into a corporation so that they could control us. And you're going to see that as we get further into the course. Let's see. For he that would be deceived, let him. So the law of the land is for living souls. We talked about that. The law of the high seas is for banking. It's all about money. This is all about banking and money. And courts are banks, guys. If you look up court in the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, it'll say C bank. If you look up judge, it'll say C banker. And we're going to go into how these guys are actually making money through the courts. The courts are what fund, because what they're doing is when they put you into jail, or they give you a fine, or even a traffic ticket, right? A lot of us don't go to jail, obviously, but whatever misdemeanors that you have, they hit your trust and then they fund themselves. And we're going to go into all that. This is an interesting fact. The Statue of Liberty had to be put in water because liberty is not freedom. Liberty is what a sailor gets. So they talk about liberty, and they've changed all these words around on us. Liberty is what a sailor gets. A court is a bank. Banks are on both sides of a river, and they direct the flow of currency, which is current sea. Like, so you have the banks, and the current goes down, and it's through the sea, which is maritime law. So all these words, this has been going on for 400 or 500 years, guys. So a lot of the words that we take for granted are part of this maritime law, and we don't even realize it. We already talked on the last course about how, you know, the baby comes through the canal and is grabbed by the the doctor, and placed in the ward. Like, these words all come from this. It's really creepy when you start looking into this stuff. So a ship pulls into a harbor, needs a certification or a certificate of manifest. The ship sits in her berth, so berthing a ship. All items represent money in maritime. What we're talking about right now is water, because this is where we're at. All ships have a captain. It comes from Latin, money. That's what captain comes from. He represents what money is on the ship, or the value. So going back, taking that back to humans, is when we're born, the water broke, you come out and you need a birth certificate because you were considered a maritime product. It's disgusting. Lawyers, courts, churches, religions all operate under maritime law. And that's why they have what's called denominations. The concept of spiritual freedom has never existed on earth except for the short time when we founded the United States. We were sovereign for a minute, but since 1868, we are under international maritime law. And it actually started way before that. In 1868, the United States was incorporated, and they stipulated that anybody that wanted to be a member would be a citizen. This is where you're going to start to learn about U.S. citizen, or I'm going to do a full separate video on this. It is the same as an employee. And we talked about that in our last course. In our last video, we showed you that the original birth certificates would say employee. You got to remember, everything in maritime law, water law, it's just business. Like, everything is about business. It's all about money, man. Like, whole court system, everything is about money. Mother equals merchant vessel. The vessel comes down the birth canal to the dock tender. Your body is an energy vessel, just like a battery, just like in the Matrix. Like, literally, they're using us, and they're putting that corporate housing around us, and they're creating. I talked about this in the last video. They're creating the trust under our name, and they're using the labor that we work for our entire lives to fund the debt of the government, which goes to the Fed, which is owed to the Federal Reserve, which is these bankers that we've talked about. So, guys, hopefully this whole picture is starting to come together. We are slaves to the people that own the Federal Reserve, which is the cabal. This is exactly how it works. As crazy as it might sound to you, stick with me. I'm just going to keep giving you more points as we go through the course. Your body is an energy vessel, just like a battery. We are considered a battery. A nursery is an energy farm, just like the plants. I grew up on a nursery, and that's from Valentine's Law Dictionary. Oh, actually, there's a few things from there. So if you look up human being in Valentine's Law Dictionary, it says a monster. So we are not human beings. Hue means color of, and we'll talk about that too. Everything in maritime law is what we call the color of law. And what that means is they're acting in the color of. So it's not real. It's like, and that's also what the hue is, color, man. It's not a real man. That's like your vessel that they're talking about. The spiritual being is the actual living being. A human being is the corporation that they've created. And that's why it's written in all their statutes. Like, you know, the same thing with the word person. Person is a corporation, guys. And we can look that definition up. But if you look in Black's Law Dictionary, it is a person, or a person is a corporation. So when you say, like, if you look at all of the US UCC codes, it always says a person, a person, a person. You're not a person. You're a living man. You are choosing to be a corporation and a person and a US citizen, which is an employee of a corporation, but that's not what you want to be. And that's the whole point of this course, is to show you how to move out of the water and onto the land. Okay, so who you are considered to be legally is a fiction. a concept or idea expressed as a name, all caps name, a symbol. That legal you has no consciousness. It's just a juristic person. It's called, in Latin, it's called ens leges. Let me write that out for you guys. E-N-S leges. And that's when you're operating in the water. You're not considered by them a real man. Obviously you are a living, breathing man or woman, but you're not considered by them. And that's the whole point of this, is to wake everybody up to where they see how to get out of the water and onto the land. All right, where was that? So testify comes from the word testicle. They used to cut them off when you were caught lying. So that's just some interesting history. Judge rules from the bench. Bench, the origination of the word bench is bank, B-A-N-C, which is Latin, and then bank. So judge rules from the bank. The circuit court, circuit is energy, battery, banking, electricity. The break, you break the flow of energy and you get charged. So you get, they say you catch charges. It's because you're breaking the flow of energy. And we're actually going to show you in this how to actually keep that flow going and allow your trust to pay the charges. Like, nobody asks when they get charged, what's the charges? Like, not what's the charges in terms of what are you charging me with, but how much? You can actually, that's all it is, guys. It's charges. It's literally charges. And they charge that onto your Sestig Trust, which we'll go into. Bench equals banks, courts, counts equal account. So like you get different counts. It's different accounts that they're gonna put onto your Sestig Trust. All crimes are commercial and boil down to a dollar value. Attorney's first duty is to the court and second to their client. And the court is loyal to the crown. And that's why it's the British Accreditation Registry, which is what BAR stands for. Ordo Templi and the Knights Templar, it started our banking system. All lawyers are loyal to the letter patent, which you can look that up. To pay bail, you know where that comes from? It comes from to pay baal, B-A-A-L, which is, B-A-A-L, which is baal is the same as Moloch. It's basically one of the gods the satanic gods that they worship. So where does all the money go? If you guys want to Google, there's this guy named Marvin Breyer. He was an ex-Bank of America. He was associated with Bank of America, but he was a COBOL programmer. He designed the code that transfers all the money. And at some point, his daughter got in trouble with the court, and so he started tracking the money. And he found out, how much every time you go into court, the judges are making money, the prosecutors are making money, and this is not just on their salaries. This is separate. It goes into a separate fund. A lot of this comes from Jordan Maxwell's work. If one who's also dead, they actually killed Jordan Maxwell. If one tracks the fund paid to the court, funds are not going to the right accounts mandated by the legislator. Instead, they go to private accounts associated with the Judges Association. The Judges Association is an alleged tax-exempt organization. However, they are not registered with the IRS as such. The Judges Association raises bonds and creates debts without taxpayer approval. This guy, Marvin Breyer, would always use checks so he could track them as they went through the court. And then he would do what's called a public request for records, or at the federal level, it's called a FOIA, which is the Federal Information Act. I can't remember what the O stands for. And then they have to answer you. So what is the definition of the word code, right? Codes are used to hide things, right? So like all the statutes and codes we have, hopefully this is all starting to come together for you guys. These things are not the way that we were supposed to be. This is not the way God intended our lives. And we are in maritime law, and we are being captured by, you ever heard the term inland pirates? Now you know what that means. So to illustrate that we're captured, if you have noticed in the courtrooms, the flags are vertical and they're hanging down, and they've got the gold embroidery around them. What the pirates would do, going back to maritime law, is when they would capture a ship, they would take the flag from the ship and they would embroider it, and then they'd run it up on their pole. So what they're basically saying in our courts is that they've captured the United States, which they have. So yeah, it's kind of disgusting when you think about it. So the department, let's see, I'm not going to go into all that. Basically, you can research this and see where all the money goes, and it's we will talk about it more later though. All right, I want to show you guys this now. Let's see, that's not the right. Hold on one sec. So this is a kind of a comparison between. Oh my gosh, did it again? Hold on. I'm telling you, man, when you try to bring this stuff to the surface, you start to get all kinds of resistance energetically. Okay, so difference between common law and maritime law. Common law is the land, maritime is the water. Common is physical realm, like the truth, like you're here, your skin and bones, your flesh. And maritime is the legal realm. Common law is a spiritual being. Maritime is a human, color of man being. Land, water, oops, got that on there twice. Common law is gold and silver, which is really the only true money, and I'll show you that right in the Constitution. And maritime law is Federal Reserve debt notes. Common law is consciousness, and maritime law is devoid of consciousness. Common law is present, and then maritime law is represented. Common law is lawful, and maritime law is legal, the undoing of God's laws. Common law is real, maritime law is fiction. Common law is substance, and maritime law is a reflection. It's so crazy. Like when you start to really grasp this, you'll see that everything they're doing is just a mirror. It's a total mirror of what real life actually is. And people are so lost, man. Like they won't even look at it. They're busy like trying to be beautiful on Instagram or trying to kill the world, as an entrepreneur. And it's like, guys, I mean, I understand we have to make money and that it's important to provide for yourself and for your families. And I get that. That does come first. But there's really nothing that's more important than understanding this, because once you understand this, you can stand and you can really make a difference for your family. You can really take back your take back your rights as a man or a woman or mankind. So it goes deep, and honestly, I don't think there's anything that's more important than this. Okay, so common law is real, maritime law is fiction. Common law is substance, maritime law is reflection. Common law is a thing, and maritime law is a thing named. You can actually look those up. Those are pretty interesting to look up the word thing. And common law is a creditor, and maritime law is a debtor. So that's the other thing. We talked about that in our T-bar accounting in video number 2, I believe it was. You actually are the credit to the United States government. You are the one that credits all of it. But they have you reflected as a debtor. And as a U.S. citizen, you operate on the debt side of that T-bar. As an American state national, you can move over to become the creditor, and you can claim your minor estate, and you can actually take control of that trust fund. That doesn't mean you can buy a Learjet. Some people, I mean, there are ways to actually do that, but I wouldn't recommend it. But you can actually take control and become a creditor again, because that's what you are. All this money is based on your soul. Like they've literally mortgaged yourself. They've mortgaged the human or the man. See, these words are so imprinted in us. We're not the color of man. We are man, and we're not a person. We're people. So all these words are super tricky, and we're going to do a video just on the actual diction that is used, because it's so damn tricky. But the moral of the story is as a U.S. citizen, you're a borrower, and as a state national, you're a creditor. So that's huge. In common law, you're an object, and in maritime law, you're a symbol. And then most importantly, in common law, you're a physical body, blood and flesh and blood. And in maritime law, you're a paper certificate, which is also your birth certificate. So, all right, guys, so that is all I'm going to do on this one. Land, air, and water. Like I said, this should be taught in school, but there's a reason why it's not taught in school. I mean, I'll even tell you this, that I've heard a couple different versions of this, and this is hearsay, but I do believe it's true, that the United States Navy has actually put the high water mark One person says it's in the top of the Colorado mountains, and other people say that they put it in the top of different jurisdictions so that they can legally say that we're all in the water. So going back to the, there we go. Going back to why this is important is like right now you're standing in the water, you have no rights. Like you're basically considered dead. Like every time you go into court, they're talking to your straw man. And again, we always talk about court. I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of us don't ever go into court, but it's super important that you know this, because that's where all of their quote unquote authority is derived from. And every time you go into court, you're considered dead. You're considered a vessel, which is why they always have your all caps name, and why ships are always all caps names. You're a ship, you're a vessel. And so you're standing in the water as a U.S. citizen, I guess, and we're going to go into the definition of U.S. citizen. It's not what you think, guys. We've been completely tricked. The 14th Amendment flips it. It's not, it didn't abolish slavery. It made everyone a slave, and I'll show you how that is. It's through the word person. So the goal of this course is to spiritually evolve. So as we go back to our little dude over here on the right, maybe we want this guy to go up. And what most people don't realize is that they're totally in the water. Like they don't have any standing on land. So this is your standing. So what happens is you're going to want to get 1 foot on the land and start to understand this stuff. And then eventually you're going to want to move on up to here. And this is a spiritual evolution. Like this is going back to who you spiritually are. Like that's why, hopefully I'm illustrating this, because in my mind it makes sense, but it's hard for me to understand, to portray it correctly to you. Maybe you guys are getting it, maybe you're not. But you cannot spiritually evolve without doing this. Because when you're down here, you're in their jurisdiction, and they are the Cabal. They're the dark. They worship Baal. They worship Moloch. That's how you spell it. And so when you're under their jurisdiction, it's like you have this glass ceiling above you. And until you have the understanding, the knowledge that I'm going to give you at a base level, you know, this is a level 1 type of course. I just want you guys to have enough here to understand it. And that's the whole thing. When enough people understand it, you have the ability, and I'm going to show you how. It's even in their codes of how to exit the water and get onto the land. So that's what we're going to start going into. A couple things we're going to be covering next would be a lot of the diction that's used. We have to go into that a little bit more. I need to prove to you guys that the United States is a corporation and show you how many times it's gone bankrupt. Right now it's called it is called the White House Inc. because Trump bankrupted them again. It gets really, really interesting. And what you'll see is that at this point in time, all we're waiting on is for you to stand. And I mean every single person that sees this to actually understand this, get comfortable with it, and make the stand and make the move to become what you originally were, which is a national, not a U.S. citizen. And I know that sounds crazy because it's been so ingrained in us, and I know that's a scary thing, but if you truly take the time to understand this, you'll see. And I can actually even show you, actually, let me see if I got it right here. This is important too. Fraud vitiates everything. So this is all fraud, man. This can literally, once this gets revealed, it's just all going to fall down. And we, the people, are the ones that have to reveal it. Okay, check this out. Penhallow versus Doan's Administrator. This was in 1795. Is that correct? Oh, no, that's SCR 1795. Okay. I'm still learning how to read all this stuff, guys, but it's the contracts between them involve U.S. citizens, which are deemed as corporate entities. Therefore, the U.S. citizen residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. Yeah, so we're going to go into the whole U.S. citizen thing in depth, and it's going to kind of freak you out because we've just been trained that, you know, being a U.S. citizen is the right thing and blah, 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 blah. So, all right, guys, thanks for hanging in there with me, and we'll just keep getting these videos a little bit better, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.